Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
This is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, my name is Louise Kay, and this is Your Superior Self.
Louise, thank you so much for taking the time. We're both traveling, so we're both having fun with different settings and different backgrounds. For my audience, this is a little different. It seems very white behind me. I think that's kind of fitting for, trying to find our superior selves,
And I'm dark behind me, so we're balancing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Louise, I am a fan of your work. Just recently became attracted to your content from, who knows why, but I'm sure there's a reason. I really enjoy your short videos on being present in the moment, and your teachings about duality, non-duality have been really fascinating for me on my spiritual path. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on your podcast. And I'm really happy to hear that you're enjoying the videos.
Mm-hmm. Which blows my mind because you're always traveling, you're a full-time traveler, and I guess I've traveled a little bit here recently. How do you find the time to make all that content? Where do you find your space?
It's not like some people imagine where we're really full-time traveling. The way we do it is most of the time we find a sweet spot somewhere and stay there for a few months. So or sometimes even up to 6 months if we find a really good place. So we're not constantly on the go. But those days when it's travel days, people will notice I won't upload a video. It goes quiet a little bit. And then once we're settled in a place, I kind of get into a routine. And I have some amazing team members that help me out. That makes it easier to keep producing the content.
Sure. How do you find the next place to travel to? Do you kind of meditate on that or just kind of go where the calling goes?
Yeah, we don't really specifically meditate on it, but it's we kind of tune in and feel where feels the most exciting to go right now. And I feel really blessed actually that we have this freedom just to go wherever we feel called to be, wherever we feel called to go.
It didn't always look like that for you, right? I was reading your bio, you were an English teacher for 15 years. It seems very far from where you started, where you're at now from where you started. How did you grow up? Did you grow up in a traditional family setting? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I grew up in a kind of traditional family setting. Mom, dad, I got a brother and a sister. We had a little dog. And I went to school, and then I went to college. I always had this feeling of wanting to travel since I was very young. I think part of the reason is that the place where I grew up in the north of England, it was really cold and wet and grey. And I used to have these magazines with pictures of Hawaii and California and beaches and under my bed, and I get out and look at them. So I always dreamed of seeing the world and traveling. And even when I was teaching English, that kind of also gave me the opportunity to follow my heart. And that actually led me to the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, where I got a teaching job. And it was there that I met my partner. And then from there, we went to India and really started traveling full time.
So what sparked the India, right? The guidance to go to India? I know you had a spiritual awakening, but what kind of led to that?
I got this really strong, a call in my heart, this feeling I have to go there. And yeah, I just kept hearing about India, you know, when you start opening up to spiritual teachings and reading about the teachings and hearing about them, there's so much of those original pure teachings that comes from India. It's the birthplace of much of the spirituality that we know today. And I think on some level there was a longing to connect deeply with that, and a feeling that if I go there, that's a way to connect with that energy, with those teachings. And it felt like exotic and exciting and fun. And then I found out about this woman, Amma. Do you know Amma?
I do not know her. I think I've
Okay.
heard of her. Is that the hugging saint or something
Yes,
like that?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, she came to town in the Netherlands where I was staying, and I'd never heard of her, but it looked so interesting, and I went there, and that was like my first taste of India, because you're in this hall, there's Indian music playing. It's really like a little India environment that she creates around there, and I was just caught up in it, and I had a wonderful experience, and I I got the hug from her, and it was so powerful. I felt a lot of energy, and then I had to actually go and lie down straight away because I felt so much energy. And when I lay down, I closed my eyes, and this light appeared here, like something opening up, and it became like a purple light. And then I heard her voice say to me, "Go to India. What you seek, you shall find there." And it was quite weird for me because I'd never experienced anything like that before. But it just felt right, and it felt so true. And that was like the final confirmation. When I heard that, something in me said, okay, that's it, I'm going. And I quit my job and I left my apartment, and I got a one-way ticket there. And
Wow.
yeah, it turned out to be amazing, because it was there that I experienced this opening that I'd been longing for in my heart, an opening to what's beyond the conditioning of the mind and perceiving reality through this filtered mind. There was an open, it's like that fell away, allowing the direct experience of me to recognize myself as pure consciousness. And that changed everything.
So when you see that, when you see your true self, it's not through the lens of the mind, it's not through your physical eyes, it's through a knowing or a sense, or is it like through the third eye? Like I
No,
haven't
it's not.
experienced that. So
It's not through the physical eyes or the third eye. It's more like a felt sense, a felt knowing. It's not like I find my true self, which is what people think, that I then is looking for it, is seeking it. It's the recognition that I is the true self. I'm not finding something outside of me or an experience. And it's so simple that we're overlooking it all the time. So if we look at this word I, when we talk about I, and then we just become still and we reflect on, well, what is that? Like, what is that I? What is it referring to? Then we can see it's not all my beliefs, because I am aware of the beliefs. So what's this I that's aware of them? It's not my thoughts, because I'm aware of the thoughts. It's not my emotions, because I am aware of my emotions. It's like this I is aware of everything. And everything, all these objects and experiences are constantly changing and moving and coming and going. Even the physical body is changing. But this I that's aware of it, it's never changing. It's never moving. It's never coming or going. So it's the recognition of that. And the way to directly experience it, know yourself as that, is to become really still, really present, and kind of sense it. Like if you don't think about anything, don't try to figure anything out. And you're just aware that you're aware of your breath. And you start to attune to this underlying stillness that's here. When you can attune your attention to that, it's like you're already here. And if you keep attuning your attention to that, moment to moment, and then every time thoughts or some energy pulls your attention, you keep bringing it back. Sooner or later, this higher consciousness is going to expand in your system. So you're going to become more present. You're going to naturally hold your attention here as your consistent, regular state, rather than perceiving reality through a filter of the conditioning that you received from childhood. Then you have the capacity to perceive in this moment, totally fresh, just as pure consciousness that's aware.
How does your perception, like you step more into that pure consciousness, how does that change you as far as living inside of this reality, inside of the matrix, right? Inside of the stories, the character that we're playing now, like how does that change? Do you still go back to that character, or are you just aware of that character?
The character's still there, and it's not possible to totally eliminate all conditioning, because then you would be dead, basically. But what happens is the character becomes refined, it becomes purified, and that is like a process that happens in time and space in our life, where this higher consciousness infiltrates our system like a light illuminating from within. And that light illuminates any darkness that's here, any unconsciousness that's here. And it begins to purge, to fall away, to integrate. So we become consciously aware of conditionings that we've taken on and belief systems that we've taken on. And then as we become aware of it, there's space. And that brings the capacity to see the belief systems and the conditionings, and to inquire, well, is this serving me in my life? Is this the belief system that I want to carry with me through my life? Or is there something that will serve me better? Now, once we see we're carrying a belief that's not true and that's not serving us, then it can fall away. And when it falls away, it's like pieces of baggage falling away, heaviness falling away. We become lighter. We lose a lot of fear about what people are going to think of me. And the whole orientation of the system changes, because most people, what drives them in life is finding a way to feel a sense of worth or value, to feel accepted, that others will look to me, that I have worth, and that I feel inside myself I have worth. And many times we're not even aware how that motivation is totally running us, like how what we say or how we relate to people is driven from that. It's not actually our authentic, natural expression. It's like, if I behave like this, will you see me? Will you love me? Will you accept me? If I try to manipulate this external circumstance, will you then not reject me? So it creates a lot of drama, confusion, chaos, and all that starts to fall away. When that falls away, there's a more pure expression of the true personality, that which wasn't stifled by the traumas and conditionings and that we received growing up. And many people go through this phase where they feel like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, it feels like my life is falling apart. Like, I'm not interested in these things I was interested in before. Like, who am I? And it's good when that happens, because you reach this point where there's enough space for your natural expression to start to flow through. And that natural expression is informed by the truth of who you are, is informed by higher consciousness. And the nature of that is compassion, it's unconditional love, it's gentleness, it's harmonious. So that begins to emanate forth from within in every aspect of our life.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that, right? Like I don't know, like what are we doing, like especially in the Western world, like with this idea of materialism and like success, like what are those concepts, right? Like that we've been programmed with. And then it's like, to your point of like losing interest in it, like you start losing interest in the material things, you start losing interest in the rat race, you lose interest in the old models of success, and then you kind of question that. And I know for me, right, like a father of three and a husband, and like there's more on the line than just me, right? Like there's lives that I need to take care of. And so what I have struggled with, and I know that other people have struggled with, is like, how do you maneuver this idea of finding your true self without taking care of people in your life that you need to take care of, your other responsibilities, right? Like, because you can lose interest in the material things, the material items, the material ways of success, and you find questioning a hunger for something more. And sometimes it's hard for us to continue down those roads that we're programmed to go down. And it's kind of like, you find yourself at a crossroads of like, where do I go now? Like, how do I continue? Like, because like inside of us, like, I'm sure you felt it, where your heart is calling for something more, but the voices of society are saying something totally different, and you don't align with that. And you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to do the right thing that society says is right, but inside there's a pulling for you to do something different, because that is your knowing, that is your true self. And it's like, how do you carefully walk that line and that balance of, taking care of the things that you need to take care of while exploring that true self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, first of all, being able to recognize that voice that you're talking about, that voice of the true self or the higher self or the inner guidance, whatever you want to call it. There's some intelligence here that, when we open to it, begins to communicate with us through what we call intuition or a gut feeling. And everybody's experienced it at some point in their life, just like this feeling in the pit of your stomach, like this doesn't feel right. And then if you ignore it, something bad happens. You get a reflection of it. And then you look back and say, oh, I had that feeling. I knew it, actually. It's that feeling. And when you become aware of it and you start to listen to it, acknowledge it, and also take action on what it's saying, then you become more aligned with this unified field of intelligence, rather than being disconnected from it, which is how we experience reality when we're identified with me as a separate individual conceptual self that's striving to achieve something, to get more and more and more. When you disidentify from that, there's a natural connection to this underlying unified field of intelligence. And then if you start to take action on it, on that inner guidance, even if it feels scary, then you start to see synchronicities happening and things start lining up. And the more that you can do it, the more it builds your confidence and trust in it, because you can see, yeah, I acted on it and I saw this synchronicity. But it's very important that we also live life in a very grounded way, where we don't negate our responsibilities. So like you said, when you have children, when you're a husband or a wife, you have a mortgage to pay, it doesn't come from wisdom to suddenly say, okay, this is a kind of a matrix. Nothing is real anyway. Nothing matters. I'm just going to follow my heart. My heart wants to go hang out at the beach and drink coconuts. See you later. It's not like that. We have to take full responsibility for our life situation. And if we don't, life will reflect that back to us. Because maybe it's not your highest excitement to go play all day and then become homeless because you haven't paid your mortgage. Actually, no, your highest excitement is to live in the nice, comfortable house. So it's about finding the way that the two worlds, the spiritual world, the world of the heart, and the material world connect. And actually, they're not separate worlds. They are actually one and the same. When we begin to bring higher consciousness into the material world and into forms, then we live the spiritual world every single moment, regardless of what we're doing or where we are or who we are with. Even something that the mind might have an idea about, like, oh, this is not a spiritual thing. Maybe taking your car to get fixed at the mechanic becomes a spiritual thing. And every moment you're deeply present in the moment, and that presence affects whoever you're with, wherever you are. So life becomes like one meditation, and the formless and the form are actually not separate from each other.
So you gained all this information through that one hug?
No. No.
I was also reading, right, like, which is interesting to me, right? Like you were channeling a bit too of I don't know what beings, I don't know their background, but I know you did that for a bit, right? Like, how did that start? And then did you just get to a certain point where it didn't matter if you did that anymore, that it's all of us anyway, so that information is just coming from a different aspect of yourself? And then did you just, because I noticed that you don't do that as much, or if you, I don't think you do it at all, do you?
No, I don't. No.
So yeah, I mean, I guess, how did it start for you? Like, I guess, did it just take part of your evolution, like that you needed that for a part of your evolution of consciousness? And then how did it, why did it stop?
Yeah, it kind of does feel like that I needed that part of my journey. And then when I didn't need it anymore, it kind of transitioned in a very natural way. But it happened spontaneously. I wasn't trying to channel, or like, I mean, I'd heard about channelings and I'd listened to some, and it was kind of interesting for me. But after I'd experienced that opening that I mentioned when I was in India, something opened up, like kind of multidimensionally as well. So it was like a door opened, and it came spontaneously when I was in a meditation one day. It just started coming through, and I kind of instinctively knew that it was channeling, like it was some intelligence that was different. It wasn't something from me, it wasn't me. And it was really just fun at the beginning, and I was just having fun with it. My partner was asking questions, and then I told some people, and they thought it was fun too. So they started asking questions, and yeah, I think I put some videos on YouTube just for fun as well. I didn't like have this idea, oh, I'm going to channel. And people seemed to be really enjoying it, and I was having fun, and it kind of just grew, and then I was doing it. And I did it for about 2 years, actually. I was channeling these non-physical beings, a non-physical intelligence. And when I was channeling, it felt like that this intelligence was using the information that was somewhere, somehow in my system, and using my system like a vehicle or a vessel to bring it out. It was almost like the system hadn't matured enough to express it, like standing alone. And it felt like they were using it as a vessel. And I don't know if any of it's true. Like maybe it was just my imagination the whole time. I said to people all along, you know, this feels to me like I'm channeling. If this information resonates, then take it. If it doesn't resonate, just disregard it. Like it didn't really matter to me that it was channeling or not. For me, it was more about the actual information. Like, is this useful? Is this benefiting people? Is this helpful? And it seemed to be. And at some point, there arose this kind of I could say, desire or a longing, or just a feeling that it felt true to express this information from my own heart, from inside my own being. And it just transitioned like that. And then it felt like the channeling's not necessary. It was almost like making a phone call to plug in or to connect to something, and then a realization, I don't need to make this phone call. This is right here.
Mm-hmm. Well, who were you making the phone call to?
These non-physical beings that said they were a collective that spoke as one, but it was like, many beings with kind of like one intelligence that was unified. And they said that they were existing in another dimension than our dimension, in the location of what we know as the Pleiadian star system. But they said if we went there, if we had the capability to go there, we wouldn't find them because they're there in that location, but in a different dimension.
So when they were giving you this information, right? Like, did you like kind of like balk at it? Did you kind of like question it, right? Like, am I making this up? Am I pulling information like this information from books that I read previously? Like, I've heard a lot recently of like different dimensions and things like this, like different civilizations. And I'm just trying to understand a little bit more of like what that means for us right now, right? There's a documentary on Netflix that they talk about ancient civilizations, and I mean it's nice to hear it, right? To think about it, like what if this is, what if there's more to our history than what they've been, what we've been told, right? So like when they started telling you this information about multi dimensions and traveling through this, if we ever could, right? Like I don't know how that would happen, like putting our consciousness on light and like traveling it through different dimensions. Like did you kind of like, I don't know, did you question that, or did you just kind of like, oh well, that's nice?
I was constantly questioning, like, is this my imagination? Is this real? What is this? And I came to the point where I felt like it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. The only thing that matters is the information itself. Like if someone on the street is saying it, if someone on TV is saying it, if I'm saying it, if some other beings are saying it, I don't know if other dimensions exist. I don't know if other beings exist. But ultimately, if we need to know about that, we'll know in the moment we need to know. And my sense is that there is a lot more to our reality than meets the eye. And I've personally glimpsed that quite a lot. But is there just something happening in my brain where, I don't know, some chemical is released and I'm hallucinating? I don't know. I think maybe in the future scientists will understand much more and be able to explain much more. But it remains a huge, wonderful, magical mystery to me for the most part.
Well, I think truth is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like your truth is your subjective experience. My truth is my subjective experience. Like who's to say that your truth is the truth and mine is the truth, right? Like it's what, you know, obviously there's science, right? Cause and effect. But to your point, I think reality is something totally different than what we perceive. We can only perceive a fraction of it, right? I'm so curious, like what did you experience, right? Like what did you see glimpses of?
Oh, well, that's quite a rabbit hole. I had many different, what you could call multi-dimensional experiences, seeing beings and interacting with beings that do not appear human. Some physical, some semi-physical, some non-physical, seeing energies, feeling energies.
Is this through meditation or is this through like did you ever do psychedelics or anything
no,
like that?
I've never done psychedelics. I feel like it's probably better if I don't, because life's psychedelic enough for me as it is. It's actually calmed down a lot now, so it's much less. It was a little bit intense at one point where it was kind of distracting and a bit challenging to function in everyday life with all these extra dimensional openings happening. And I realized that it can become quite a fascination, and that fascination can become a distraction from what now I understand to be the most important path, what I call the path of truth. And that truth is what you could call the absolute truth. So we have the relative truth, which is like my experience of reality, your experience of reality, everyone's different experiences looking from different angles through and having different experiences. But beyond that, there's an absolute truth, which is the fundamental truth of reality, which is pure consciousness. And for me, it's most important to open to that and to become aware of that, because that's the only thing that brings peace and harmony. It doesn't matter. Well, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's interesting and important to study science, of course, and know about other dimensions and explore things in the material physical world. It's very important. But if we put too much of our attention in that and become totally disconnected from this absolute truth, this absolute reality of pure consciousness, then we're bringing about an imbalance, and we're going to see a collective reflection of this imbalance, which we can see through wars. Because if you're disconnected from it, then it's easy to see everyone and everything as something separate. When something is seen as separate and different, and when one is identified with a conceptual self of me and gets a sense of self through my way being the right way and your way being the wrong way, we start with an internal war, which then expresses externally as a war, and it creates more division and separation. It's only if we can access pure consciousness and connect to that and know ourselves as that, that we can know an underlying peace, and that peace then can inform our expression in life and the way that we perceive reality. And I think what's happened with humans, with our societies, is become out of balance, where we're very, very focused on materialism and forms, and there's been a huge disconnect from the formless. So I'm very interested in inviting people to rediscover, remember the essence of who they are, beyond any form, beyond any idea, beyond any belief system, by becoming very still and being very present in the moment and inquiring, who am I? What is it that's here right now when there's no thoughts, when I'm just still? Then most people can sense a deeper stillness that's here. And that's the gateway to open up to that stillness and to surrender into it, like diving into an ocean of peace.
I love that. You said something that caught my attention was like our relationship to that consciousness, which is fundamental to our reality. Like, what is our relationship to that fundamental part of reality, that consciousness? What are we to that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, because initially it seems like there's me, and then there's the divine, or you could call it God, or the universe, or this intelligence. And when you taste that, when you glimpse that, when you open to that, there's an even deeper recognition that, oh, it's actually not separate from me. It is me. It's only one. So there's not me and consciousness as two separate things. There's me. I am consciousness. And everyone else is the same consciousness. So underlying everyone's personality, underlying everyone's conditioning, underlying everyone's unique expression is the same one consciousness, which doesn't have any form, which doesn't have any personality, which doesn't have any shape or size. It's invisible, but we can know ourselves as it. And it expresses in form like a creation, like a piece of artwork or a dance or a song, through all these physical forms that are all different, like a huge symphony. But if it's playing in tune and everyone's in key, can you imagine the music that would create? That would create utopia on earth. But right now, there's a lot of people playing out of key. They're singing off notes. That's why we have wars.
I know, right? I've been reading this book called The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. Have you ever read this?
Who's that by?
It is by Bear T. Spalding, which I think this is written like very early on in like 1894.
I've never come across this book. Is it good?
I think it's great, right? Like it talks about the original teachings of like Jesus Christ, and like it's basically pointing to us as that we are gods, essentially, that we can do everything that Christ can do, that he was here to teach us the way of reaching that God state, or that spiritual body, or the universal mind substance, and how to connect with that. And it feels good, right? Like, but there's that programming of, that we're not that, like we're not a part of that fundamental consciousness that you're talking about, that we can dip into to feel freedom, to feel oneness. to remember our true essence. And these like stories of like these I guess they were like they took a trip through like India and like in the mountainous ranges over there, like some of the places over there, and these guys, there's like 5 of them, and they were like demonstrating. This is like his, account of his experience there, and these guys had like what they call in India like cities, right? Like these powers to be able to be in 2 different locations like simultaneously and be able to do different things. Did you experience that at all in India? Like people that were able to do these types of manipulations in this reality?
Not that I'm aware of, but
No.
maybe I was interacting with someone who was also simultaneously in another location and I didn't know about it. It's possible.
Sure, but the entire book is just pointing to us remembering these states. Like just for instance, an excerpt from here is, if he should but realize that every idea is a direct, perfect expression from God, and as soon as this idea comes to him, he would immediately make it his ideal to be expressed from God. Then take his mortal hands off and let God express through him the perfect way. This ideal would come forth perfect. Here we must realize that God is above the mortal, and the mortal cannot help in any way. In this way, man would learn in a short time to express perfection. The one great thing man must learn is to get forever through and out of the psychic or mind forces and express directly from God, for all psychic forces are created wholly by man, and they are likely to mislead. So, I mean, basically the entire book is like that, where if we get away from God and we get more into this character, the more separation we feel. And everything points to us going back to that, the fundamental, right? The fundamental of this reality, which is consciousness. But there's always those fears that are associated with that, of letting go, of expressing, God's ideals through us. We feel like, oh, well, that's just my imagination, or I'm making these things up, or, like I'm sure what you felt with channeling of like, is this information true? Like, but, it resonated with you. So it was true to you. I think we're just so programmed, especially with technology, of like what success looks like, especially from social media and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And, we all want to be free. We all want freedom. We don't want to be chained to a desk, right? But we have to realize our responsibilities here, and playing this part that we're here playing right now. And, I know what I'm interested in is like really diving into that, that God state, really. And I don't know, like living in that fully. But does that mean like giving up on desires, because our desires bad? Or is it more so like just going with the flow? Like today I saw, like I was out running and saw like geese flying in a V, and like they're just like, they're sharing consciousness. Like they're just automatically like getting in form, right? And they're just, one would come up from behind and they would just alter their direction and like shift like simultaneously. And like, it was just like a natural ebb and flow. And it's kind of like, is that how we're supposed to be with life? Instead of just always trying to white knuckle everything and create this idea, this false idea of what life should be, where we obviously don't find happiness in, that we just kind of let go and just kind of go with the flow, like the geese were, and then just find our natural spots, like from that. Does that make sense at all? Like, I know I go on these rants, but like,
no, that really makes sense. And that's what it means to surrender. When we talk about surrendering to God or surrendering to truth, it means letting go. It means stopping. It means giving up identification with that conceptual self that most people have spent their whole lifetime working on and building up this idea of me that's smart, that's funny, that's likable, that's intelligent, that's successful. Now, it's not that they're bad qualities or we shouldn't have them, but it's when we're invested in the idea that that's who I am, that we're identified with a conceptual me, an idea about who I am. And what we give up is the identification with the personality. So it's like, if you can imagine erasing all your past, erasing everything you believe, like or dislike, all memories, all experiences. And if we could hit the reset button right now and just be aware that I'm aware, I'm here without all of that, we can transcend it. What it means to transcend it is to discover what lies beyond it. It doesn't mean that you can't function in the world. It doesn't mean that you don't have any desires anymore, but it means that the way that you function in the world and the way that you relate with other people and with the physical world is more in tune with the deeper truth of who you are. So the desires are wonderful things, because desires actually can guide us. It's a kind of a feeling inside, I want this, and that if it's aligned, if we're connected, can be an intuition to take action on something, which allows this higher intelligence, allows consciousness, God, to act through us, like it mentioned in the passage that you read from the book. If you surrender and you let it flow, the desire is the feeling, the movement of where it wants to go, which way the dance wants to dance through you. Now, if the desire is born from the egoic mind, it won't bring a sense of fulfillment and true enjoyment. It will be empty. Like the idea that if I become famous in some way, like a famous singer or whatever, then everybody will love me. So I want to do that. Now, the true passion is not actually to sing, it's to be famous, because there's a belief that then I'll be lovable. It's empty, it's identification with an egoic desire. That brings suffering, because it's unending. That ego will never receive enough love or attention. If you just keep feeding it, it wants more and more of whatever you're trying to feed it, whether it's money, fame, being lovable, any other desire. If your desire is in alignment, then it will bring more joy into your life and more abundance on every level also. But you're not doing it to get abundance. You're doing it for the pure joy and the love for whatever this desire is.
I love that. I love all of that. So surrender, right? Like, is that the same thing as giving up?
It's giving up effort to be a certain way. Like if you could totally stop right now, giving up trying to be any certain way or trying to do anything, then you can recognize that you're already here and you can't stop being here. You're just here and you're aware that you're here. There's no effort to be here. Now, most people have a belief that just as I am, I'm not okay. I'm not lovable. I have to be something more. I have to be something better than this. But that's not true. The truth is that just the mere fact that we exist means that we are enough. And hearing this information can bring a deep relaxation into the system, like a relief, like, oh, I don't have to keep trying to be something better, to be something more. I'm enough. And that gives space to really feel, well, okay, if all my energy is not going into trying to be somebody, what do I love to do? What is my passion, my creative expression? What is my joy? Most people disconnected from that at a very early age as a way to survive, as a way to cope with dysfunctional environmental situations. So when we start to reconnect with that, in the beginning, it might not be clear. What actually do I really enjoy? Not doing it to get money, not doing it to receive approval, but just doing it because I love it. And maybe you have to try a bunch of different things to find out what your true enjoyment is in life, what really brings you love, what really brings you a feeling of fulfillment.
And what is that for you, Louise?
It's this. I feel like I found the best job in the world. It doesn't feel like a job for me. I just get to sit with people and explore and meditate. And I love it so much. I feel very grateful to have found this.
Well, which brings me to, have you been able to, and I'm sure you have, right? Like been able to find a way to make this a living for you so that you can do this full time? Like, is there ever like does the universe keep providing you with opportunities to do this? Like, do you have like intuition on like, obviously you use your intuition on where to go next, but like, is there does the human nature ever creep back in and say, all right, sometime the money's going to run out. Like I need to start thinking about like other ideas or methods to make money, or does the universe keep showing up and providing for you?
Actually, I experienced that after I went to India that first time. I was just living off of my savings then because I quit my job. And my savings were actually pretty much running out. And I'm really happy that I experienced that because looking back, I can see how happy I was. And I hardly had any money. Me and my partner were living in the attic in his parents' house. And we would just go to the beach and we were laughing and we never felt a sense of lack or poverty. We actually had a conversation about it recently, about how we had pretty much nothing. We didn't have a house, we didn't have a car. From the eyes of mainstream society, we would have been failures. And we were so happy, just enjoying every single day so much. And that experience showed me that money is not the thing that brings you happiness. Happiness comes from within. Happiness comes from being connected to what you love. Happiness comes from healthy relationships. And you're creating a wonderful environment around you. And it became very clear to me that it doesn't make sense to do something in life that I don't enjoy just to get money in order to survive. It felt like such a fear-based way of living. And I discovered this inner abundance that was like a fountain of joy from within. And the only thing I wanted to do was something that was really true for me. And there was absolutely no compromise on that. But I didn't know then what was true for me. And I felt like wanting to express in the world in some way, but I didn't know how. And I actually felt that longing so strongly that I made a prayer. And this prayer was, I think, the most powerful prayer that I've ever made in my life. And it came deep from within my heart. I spoke directly to the universe or God, and I said, please show me what do you want me to do in this world? What is the most true thing? I will do anything if you can show me what it is that I am here to do. And I literally would have been willing to just clean toilets. That would be my idea of the worst job, probably. If I was shown this is what you're here to do. It was that level of surrender where I would have done anything. I was like feeling I will surrender my whole life to God. It's the only thing I want, to live in alignment with that. And it was actually about just a couple of days later when that channeling came through in a meditation. And I didn't make the connection at first, but then a little while later, I remembered the prayer and I looked back and I saw how everything had kind of sprung out of that moment. And the channeling led to what I'm doing now. And I feel very supported by life on every level. It's very important for me to live from this place of alignment and follow what feels true, what feels exciting. And I found that when I live in that way, life supports me 100%. Now, that support might not always be my mind's idea of what support looks like. The support that comes might be a huge challenge. But when there's a knowing that the challenge is there, because that's what you need for more growth, or to see something that's still playing out, that's not in alignment, then even the challenges are blessings. So there's a welcoming of everything and a deep trust in this universal intelligence that you could call God or life or the universe, and that a commitment to living and walking that path of truth to the best of one's ability. And it requires vigilance, because the egoic self is always there waiting for a moment to kind of sneak back in. And it can sneak back in, but if you're really dedicated to this path, then you see it and then come back.
Yeah, I see it all the time. Creeping in, right? Like,
Yeah.
And taking over, and you have to do more of this or you have to do more of that. Like, it's, you don't have enough guests on your show. You need to go and find more now, and yeah, having the discipline to, or the awareness to step back and see for what it is, right? Like, it's just, it's fear-based. It's the fear of not having enough, or unworthiness, or if you don't find more people, if you don't find more support, ultimately, like, what does that lead to, right? Like, what is that? What do you fear? What do you fear the most? And it's failure. It's ultimately, it's death, right? Like, that's the ultimate fear. Like, if I don't do this, will I be supported? Will I lose all of that? Right? Like, that's the big fear. And
Yeah.
But then you fall into this knowing, right? Like, sometimes I get glimpses of it, of like, you're not this anyway, right? Like, you're not this character anyway, but we're here to fulfill something, right? Like, I don't want to say it's like we're here just to be. I feel like we have a purpose here. I mean, do you get that sense? I mean, through your experience, like, are we here for a purpose, or is it just for the experience?
My feeling is that our purpose is to remember who we are, to discover our true self, and from there, everything else falls into place. That's the most important, to remember that. And then the game can just be enjoyed as a game, as a play. When that's not known, the play is like a battle. It's like a huge struggle. But when you know that it's just a game, and who you are can't be destroyed, it can't die, it can't be harmed by anything, then you're free. And you can know that freedom in this life while you're still alive. You don't have to wait until you die to remember who you are beyond the form.
That's the paradox, though, because it's like, you know, that that's a freedom to that. But I don't want to end up in Louise's parents' attic either, you know, like. It's like,
well, that's what it means. It means giving up control. Our mind wants to control reality. We say that will be bad if that happens. I don't want that. I need to manipulate to make sure this doesn't happen, because this will keep me safe, and this will make sure I'm loved, and this will make sure I have value. Now, what if you give up trying to control anything? Well, that's scary. So when these moments come that you were speaking about, like the fear of death, the fear of not having enough of something, not having enough viewers, not having enough money, not having enough love, not having enough fill in the blank, not enough. If in that moment you can surrender fully into that not enough, surrender it all to God, and feel how that feels in the body, be totally present with it, and go into it, that not enough, whatever, is the gateway, the portal to discovering the abundance of infinite unconditional love that is never ending. Nothing else, anything else that comes is just a bonus. And when you know that, wherever you are, whoever you're with, you know that your inner peace is not dependent on external circumstances. It comes from within. But of course, you still have preferences, like you'd rather not live in someone's attic, you'd rather live in a nice house. But your happiness now is not dependent on where you live. You just will enjoy more the nice house. And if it goes away, your happiness won't be affected. You still have the same level of peace and happiness because it's sourced from within.
I love that. Louise, how can people connect with you? How can they find more about you?
They can connect with me on social media, on YouTube. If you just search Louise Kay, you'll be able to find me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And they can visit my website, louisekay.net. And if they want to connect more, every Sunday, I offer an open Zoom meeting. It's by donation and everyone's welcome. And I start with a guided meditation, which is an invitation to direct people to what I'm speaking about, to know it for themselves. And then after that, we have about an hour and a half of Q&As where people can come up on screen and ask a question, or we can explore whatever's relevant for them in their life. So everybody's welcome, and they can find the registration form on my website, or it's louisekay.net/Zoom. And I also do in-person retreats all around the world, so they can find information about those too on my website.
I love it. Louise, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a blast. We're definitely going to have to do this again.
Well, I would love to. It's been great. Thank you for inviting me again. And I really wish you all the best success with your show. And I hope that you have many, many followers and you keep doing what you love to do. It's wonderful.